So, an aid convoy from the USA has coincidentally appeared on the Colombia-Venezuela border, and Juan Guaido, the self-declared interim president of Venezuela, has, of course, pledged to accept this aid personally, even though the parallel Maduro government, which has control of the military, the border police, etc., has already said that it doesn't want the aid in advance. So let's talk about that. It's clearly a political move from Guaido and the US. It's not being made to help Venezuelans who would receive the aid, but to give Guaido an opportunity to paint himself as a humanitarian savior who accepts the aid while the heartless, evil Maduro government refuses to let it in. This is despite the fact that, the USA, and specifically Elliot Abrams, the very man behind this aid convoy, has previously used aid to smuggle weapons to right-wing terrorists in Latin America. And also that the Red Cross has specifically asked that aid not be politicized, like it is here. So, as you might expect, the Venezuelan government isn't letting these trucks full of goods it has already formally refused across the border. Yet these trucks are still trying to force their way across anyway, which is kind of extremely illegal, and not just in Venezuela either. So, how about a nice analogy to help us understand the situation? Imagine if, back in 2005, the US refused aid for the victims of Hurricane Katrina from Venezuela and Cuba. Oh wait, that actually happened. So let's go further. Imagine if it didn't stop there. Let's say Hugo Chavez and Fidel Castro decided to bring a convoy of aid trucks to the US-Mexico border anyway, despite the US clearly having said that it wasn't going to accept them. And also, let's say that some rich idiot like Richard Branson held a concert there called US Aid or something, like he did on the Colombia-Venezuela border. Then, let's imagine that these trucks tried to force their way across the border to the USA, violating all immigration and customs procedures by crossing the border illegally and breaking about 100 laws in the process, and ignoring the officials when ordered to stop. What would the USA do? I'll tell you what the USA would do. They would deploy the army on the border and blow them all up. And you know what? Chavez and Castro would deserve the blame for it, because it would be a transparent attempt to put on a political show rather than an honest attempt to get aid into the USA to help the victims of the hurricane, which, apart from the fact that it's also ridiculous and it sounds like it's from a parody, is also the reason why they didn't do it. And exactly the reason why the USA did do it here, because this is just plainly a political move, not a humanitarian one. Now, I hate borders and all that, and I also am not a fan of Maduro at all, but Venezuela is pretty much just doing what any other country on earth would do when a bunch of trucks just start trying to force their way across the border. This is aid, weaponized for political purposes, and it is despicable. Any honest attempt to get aid to the Venezuelan people would have to involve the participation of the Maduro government, even if you consider them illegitimate, because they're still the ones who are in control. They control the army, all of the institutions, etc. So the fact that there is no coordination with them, and that this was a spectacle from the very beginning, shows that this has absolutely nothing to do with helping the Venezuelan people. It's all about politics. That's all, thanks. And just to let you know, this is part of a longer video that I'm currently working on that will be out in a few days, so look out for that. I just thought that it was relevant on its own, so I wanted to release it by itself, while the news is still fresh. Though just for the record, there definitely should have been a concert with Fidel Castro and Hugo Chavez. And also you should subscribe to my channel. Bye.